Welcome to Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters. I'm your host, W.J. Sheehan. Hello everybody and welcome. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your busy day and spending them with me. Today's account is entitled The New Jersey Evidence. This evidential summary was brought to me by Bob Craig, a resident of New Jersey. Here is what Bob had to say. My wife and I are both born and bred New Jerseyans, having lived here our entire lives. Having been married for over 25 years, we had purchased a new home and moved to an area close to the New Jersey Pinelands National Reserve, which is a protected area within the state. There are quite a few homes in our community, and it would be considered by most to be somewhat upscale in nature. I don't make mention of my town because I'd rather not bring any ill will against our community or our residents for what had occurred. The evidence which I had initially told you about was seen in 2001 in the late spring of the year. However, looking back, I believe the story actually had begun several years earlier. The houses in my neighborhood each have a fairly large piece of property. Now, I'm not talking about a farm, but let's just say an acre or better for the most part. I can remember seeing that someone had posted to a telephone pole a picture and a name of their missing dog in what I believe was 1998. It was a small pedigree, which I think was a Shih Tzu. Now, there's nothing particularly unusual about that in any community. Dogs do get lost and run away, and we are all well aware of that. I don't think it was but a few months later that someone else had posted the same kind of notice on the poles in our area about their dog being missing. This dog was also a smaller pedigree that I believe was some type of Cocker Spaniel. Our neighborhood is definitely upscale, so as the list of missing dogs grew, they were typically those that were smaller in size. By the way, the grooming trucks are regular visitors to homes in the area. I only say that to paint a vivid picture for you of the number and types of dogs of which I speak. Over a period of about 2 years, the amount of missing dogs had gotten to the point where the local news would actually say during their broadcasts that another dog has come up missing in such and such a community. It was now a common line of thinking that dog thieves were at work in our township. But in spite of everyone's diligence to walk their dogs on a leash and try not to leave them out alone, we all know that that is not always possible during our busy lives, especially during inclement weather to walk your dog. Sometimes we are left with the old clothesline tied to a tree in the backyard. In spite of all this apparent dog thievery going on, my wife and I actually had our hearts set on getting a dog. And this we did. We purchased a Belgian Shepherd dog from a breeder in Connecticut. We had set up a line for him in the backyard which consisted of a large auger-type screw that was turned down into the ground some 3 feet, to which was attached about 25 feet of welded link chain. Our dog, who we named Lucky, wore a stainless steel choker collar, and we would hook him to the chain with a brass snap. Believe me when I tell you, there was no way that Lucky could break away from this tether without taking his head off in the process. I would only put Lucky on this tether when it was virtually impossible due to weather or time to walk him. Now, because of our proximity to the reserve, there was more than an ample supply of wildlife around our home. I'm talking about deer, raccoons, woodchucks, rabbits, squirrels, chipmunks, and damn near anything else you can think of. And all of them would cause Lucky to go into an uproar. He would bark and howl and even stand on his hind legs when yapping at these critters. Over time, he learned that he had a choker around his neck that was attached to a limited length of chain. Over the next months, I have to say that you get kind of immune to the dog's barking. There were so many animals around, and the deer would actually taunt him. Now, knowing that he couldn't chase them, they would stand 100 feet away in the woods, eating and walking around, which drove Lucky crazy. In late April of 2001, we had been getting rain for some 3 days or so. We all know the feeling of when is it going to end when these rains come. So I would keep the snap end of the chain by the back door, which enabled me to just open the door and hook him to his tether, allowing him to take care of business for 15 minutes in the rain, after which he would always scratch the back door to let me know he was done. He started out with his usual ritual barking, after which he would begin sniffing around and then relieve himself. I have to admit that on that night, I kind of lost track of the time, being involved in something on the computer upstairs in the house. When I looked at the clock, a half hour had gone by and it was pouring rain. I shouted down the stairs to my wife, asking her if she had let the dog in, and she said no. I thought he was with you upstairs. So I went down and opened the door, and his chain was laying in the grass. He was gone. As you would well expect, I was outside, calling him over and over again as the rain was coming down in buckets. My wife was now by the back door after realizing what had happened. At some point, I looked down and saw that the snap was detached from the chain and gone. Now, this was a solid brass swivel ring attached to the clasp, which I am sure that you yourself have seen before. There was no way that you or I could break it or tear it away from the welded chain. You would have a better chance of backing the galvanized screw out of the ground. I immediately thought of all the supposedly stolen dogs in the area, but in my mind I had said that all the thief would have to do is unsnap him from his collar. This chain had been broken off, which could more than likely only be done with bolt cutters. As I was standing there in this rain, I looked down on the ground. Even though our backyard was grass, there was quite a bit of well-worn area right down to the soil where Lucky had been running around through the many months on his tether. As I stood there looking, I saw 2 huge footprints in the soaked soil. They looked like giant human footprints, maybe 2 feet long and very wide. The rain was coming down so hard that they were actually deteriorating before my eyes. Lucky was very obedient, and no matter what, he would have come to my call, especially when he was out in snotty conditions. I called the police, and when they had arrived at our home, I told them what had happened and what I had seen in regards to the massive footprints. I was told by him the usual rubbish about a black bear having taken the dog. I said to him somewhat sarcastically, "Yeah, a black bear with 24-inch feet." We never saw Lucky again, and still to this day, cats and dogs go missing in the area. Until next time, remember, always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. Sleep tight.